Introducing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. I hope that you've had a great week so far, and I hope that you listened to this week's previous episodes. I'm excited. Tomorrow's episode is with the executive producer of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and the new season of Vanderpump Rules. You, of course, remember him from this podcast several times, Alex Baskin. So make sure you check back for that. And I also have a fantastic Saturday series episode coming your way as well. Now, today's episode is about the new Sean Combs docuseries. It is a much anticipated series. It's really about the rise and fall of Sean Puff Daddy Combs, but in a different way. Of course, if you've been following this podcast for a while, you know I've covered many aspects to the fall of Sean Combs. And this one has a very different feel. Sean Combs was once one of the most powerful and influential figures in American music and fashion and pop culture. He's now a man serving a federal sentence after a wave of allegations, lawsuits, and criminal charges forced the country to confront a system of power and influence that had protected him for decades. So this Netflix docuseries, Sean Combs: The Reckoning, it's directed by Alexandria Stapleton and executive produced by Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. And I think it arrives at a moment of cultural and legal upheaval. Across 4-hour-long episodes, it lays out a decades-long timeline of alleged abuse, exploitation, and manipulation. It's told by artists, employees, witnesses, jurors, and people who lived inside the orbit of the man who built an empire and ruled it. This is the story of how that empire was built, how it operated, and how it ultimately began to collapse under the weight of its own secrets. So I went ahead and I watched all 4 episodes, and I want to break down for you, I think, some of the most important points. So Sean John Combs was born in Harlem in 1969. His father, Melvin Combs, was murdered when he was just 2 years old. That trauma, the sudden absence of a breadwinner, the instability of violence, became a defining force. He seems to have constructed a kind of mythical narrative around his father, a larger-than-life street legend whose absence he interpreted as both wound and blueprint. Some observers speculate that the way he idolized that myth and the complicated dynamics between his parents may have shaped his own attitudes toward dominance, loyalty, and his deeply troubled relationship with women, which we will get to in a bit. Now, he has said repeatedly that the loss shaped not only his ambition, but his fear of ever being powerless. He vowed young that he would never be vulnerable again. So by the time he reached Howard University, he was already calculating, already networking, already eager to move on from the margins into the center of the music world. And in 1990, at age 20, he gets his big break. He joins Uptown Records, the influential New York label founded by Andre Harrell, once known as the rapper Dr. Jekyll. Uptown was a hub of innovation, producing new jack swing, R&B, hip-hop soul, the sound that dominated radio at that time. At Uptown, he worked with Mary J. Blige, then emerging as a generational voice, Jodeci, whose gritty R&B redefined the genre, Father MC, another early hip-hop collaborator. And these were formative years not only musically but also personally, because at Uptown he crossed paths with Kim Porter, who was then a receptionist and model, Misa Hilton, a rising stylist who would birth one of his children, and also this network of artists, producers, and executives who would become foundational to the world that he was building. But his ambition often clashed with Uptown's leadership. His drive, sometimes brilliant, sometimes abrasive, eventually led to his firing in 1993. And that firing became the catalyst for everything that followed. So then, within months, he founded Bad Boy Entertainment. And very quickly, Bad Boy became a hit factory, a cultural movement, a branding phenomenon, and a lifestyle. He signs Christopher Wallace, the Notorious B.I.G., and he produced for Faith Evans, 112, Total, and many others. He shaped the aesthetic of mid-1990s hip-hop. It was polished, aspirational, and glamorous. And he became a new kind of mogul. It was interesting. He was almost part executive, but also part performer and part cultural architect. He wasn't just signing artists, he was creating stars. And the documentary series emphasizes this essential truth. He did not simply accumulate influence, he accumulated leverage. So he's shaping careers, sounds, images, cultures, gatekeeping structures. But people believed, and many say they were told explicitly, that if they did what he wanted, they would get deals, placement, tours, and visibility. And as you know, visibility equals profitability. So his approval became a currency, and his proximity became a path to fame. This is the foundation that later allegations would be built upon. So let's go back to the women. So Kim Porter, the receptionist and model, she became the mother of his 3 children, and her relationship with him was long and complicated, on and off. But she was a stabilizing presence in a world that was anything but. And of course, she has since passed, and circumstances around it are very suspicious. Misa Hilton, a creative pioneer whose work shaped hip-hop's visual culture. Now, she shared early years with him as both partner and collaborator. Jennifer Lopez. Now, their relationship was from 1999 to 2001. It was glamorous. It was, of course, heavily publicized and turbulent. The 1999 Club New York shooting case would test her loyalty and ultimately crack that relationship, and we will get back to that in a minute. And then there's Cassie Ventura. Her 2023 lawsuit alleged a decade of physical abuse, coercion, and trafficking, which became the catalyst for a federal investigation. And then Joy Dickerson Neal. Her lawsuit alleging drugging and sexual assault added to the growing wave of civil actions, all of which he denies. But these women reveal a pattern. Relationships that were marked by control, glamour, opportunity, and alleged harm. So Sean Combs wasn't just a music mogul. He also really dominated the nightlife, which of course was such a big part of the hip-hop lifestyle. Going to his parties were extremely important. Again, it gives you visibility. His parties were legendary. White parties in the Hamptons, New Year's Eve events, after-hours gatherings at hotels and mansions, and invite-only exclusive rooms. Now, lots of celebrities say, well, we would come at the 5:30 party, but it was really what happened after, maybe like 11:30 is what people talk about now. These were spaces where celebrities mingled, deals were made, favors were traded, and power was exercised. The documentary series suggests that these environments blurred boundaries, social, professional, and sexual, creating conditions where exploitation could thrive. The documentary series also details his inner circle. This was an entourage that included security personnel, personal assistants, drivers, fixers, lawyers, staff whose jobs depended on staying in good graces. Former employees describe a world where NDAs were standard, loyalty was paramount, and disobedience had its consequences. This infrastructure protected him, it insulated him, and in some cases, according to multiple allegations, helped facilitate or conceal misconduct. In the early 2000s, he brought his power dynamic to reality TV with Making the Band. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with that show. Millions watched as he demanded grueling physical challenges, humiliating errands, and constant obedience. There's the now infamous cheesecake walk, sending contestants on a miles-long journey to fetch a dessert. It has since been reinterpreted through the lens of abusive power. The documentary series frames this era as crucial evidence of a broader pattern. It's him controlling people to equate suffering with opportunity. And his reach extended far beyond music. He built an apparel line, liquor partnerships, Revolt TV, a network of branding deals, real estate holdings, hospitality, and club investments. At his peak, estimates placed his wealth in the hundreds of millions. And this empire, it just empowered him, it insulated him, and it allowed him to say on camera days before his arrest, I got $200 million in the bank, I'm good. It's a declaration that in hindsight sounds less like confidence and more like denial. So back again to the celebrity friendships and public distancing. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, he was deeply connected to Jay-Z, Kanye West, Pharrell Williams, Naomi Campbell, French Montana, Usher, countless actors, moguls, and politicians. But after the lawsuits, arrests, and incriminating footage emerged, many distanced themselves quietly but noticeably. The documentary series frames this as both a personal and cultural shift, a world recalibrating its relationship with a once untouchable icon. Now back to the 1999 Club New York shooting. That moment marked his first major legal reckoning. After a nightclub altercation, gunfire erupts. He flees in a Lincoln Navigator with Jennifer Lopez and his bodyguard. A gun was found in the vehicle. Shine, a young artist with him that night, he took the fall, a decision that shaped his life and career. The documentary series uses this moment to illustrate his influence, his ability to escape accountability, and the earliest cracks in his public persona. And then let's get back to the Biggie Tupac bombshells. This is done in episode 2 of the doc series, and it revisits the infamous East Coast-West Coast feud. Now, it introduces claims that he inflamed gang tensions, allegations that he aligned with Crips while Suge Knight aligned with the Bloods. So this assertion from another that he agreed to pay both Tupac and Suge Knight, a claim that Sean Combs has vehemently denied. This doc alleges that Combs urged Biggie to stay in Los Angeles despite the danger, and then after Biggie's murder, he charged funeral costs to the rapper's estate. So again, he inflames gang tensions. He aligns with Crips while Suge Knight aligns with Bloods, according to allegations. And there's this assertion from someone else that he was agreed to pay Tupac and Suge Knight, a claim that Sean Combs is vehemently denied. And strangely, it alleges that Sean Combs urged Biggie to stay in LA despite the danger, and that after his murder, he charged funeral costs to the rapper's estate. They also suggest jealousy or at least resentment of Biggie's talent and acclaim, and not the first time. They also suggest he was always very bitter about his lack of talent compared to the other artists. This, of course, could be projection of an ongoing fight between 50 Cent and Sean Combs. So then Curtis 50 Cent Jackson openly, as you remember, mocked Sean Combs daily on social media throughout the 8-week federal trial. He posted jokes, commentary, memes, keeping him in the news, reminding people of his alleged wrongdoings in the public spotlight. So I think there's a question of why do this doc? But the thing is, he does have a history of conflict with Combs, and he has built a career in crime-centered narratives. But I think what's most interesting is he's uniquely positioned to gather interviews that others could not. He wanted accountability, and he's inside that world. Not close enough to it, but definitely inside. And that allows this series to be sharp, unfiltered, and unafraid. So then let's go back to the raids, the arrest, and the charges. In March of 2024, Homeland Security raids his homes in Miami and Los Angeles. The agency's firearms, ammunition, strangely more than 1,000 bottles of lubricants, digital recordings, and hard drives. In September of 2024, he's arrested on federal charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, transportation for purposes of prostitution. Prosecutors say that he used drugs, violence, money, his companies, his staff, and his fame to lure victims into what was called freak-offs, alleged multi-day drug-fueled sexual encounters. He, of course, denies all wrongdoing. And then the filmmakers obtained footage of Sean Combs that he actually had a videographer shoot of him while hiding in a Manhattan hotel as arrest loomed, which of course is so strange. In the footage, he's pacing, he's sweating, he's calling his lawyers, he's barking orders, he's strategizing PR. Again, he says, "Y'all are not working together the right way, we're losing. And as I mentioned earlier, I got $200 million in the bank, I'm good." So it's one of the rawest moments of the series, the collapse of a persona that's built on invincibility. Now, his attorneys have demanded that Netflix remove the footage, calling the documentary series illegal and deeply personal. What surprises me immensely was that 2 jurors appear in the documentary series. It's a rare moment of transparency, and if you follow the trial, it may give you a little bit more insight or context. So they describe Cassie Ventura's testimony as deeply disturbing. They say the 2016 surveillance footage of him attacking her as unforgivable. But they also say Capricorn Clark's kidnapping testimony is hard to reconcile. The complex dynamics between Cassie and Sean Combs is very, very complicated, and they struggled with the legal definitions of trafficking and racketeering. So ultimately, they convicted him of 2 counts of transportation for prostitution and acquitted him on sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. So he was sentenced to 50 months in federal prison. So the documentary series argues that his fall exposes how labels protect powerful men, how celebrity culture silences victims, and how money creates immunity and how fame distorts accountability. So I think it's interesting how younger audiences, Gen Z especially, have revisited these old interviews, the music videos, the making the band clips, public outbursts, rumors once dismissed. But once dismissed as eccentricities or showmanship now read very differently. And a record of controlled dominance and alleged abuse hiding basically in plain sight. So I think it really speaks to the psychology of power. His story reflects a fear of vulnerability, a need for domination, a belief that success justifies control, a worldview shaped by loss, trauma, and ambition. And I think that it does a good job of trying to give this armchair diagnosis. It presents a portrait of a man, and it's really up to the audience what to make of it. Now, obviously, it's hard to grapple with how traumatic some of these stories are. And I think that they did so responsibly. And, with these sort of stories, which are so deeply upsetting, it's important to not re-traumatize the victims. I couldn't help but wonder how much these victims know, how much they're helping other people by doing so, by coming forward. Someone like Joy Dickerson Neal, this has been a long, ongoing process. And to think of not just her career, but Cassie's or Dawn's, how long they were strung along to believe that he was giving them opportunity while all the time just controlling them and putting their health in jeopardy too. He was one of the most influential entertainment empires in modern history, Sean John, the entire umbrella company. And he also personally redefined hip-hop. He shaped culture, he controlled careers, and he turned himself into an icon. And according to dozens of allegations, many of which remain in active litigation, he used that power to harm, exploit, and to manipulate. And like I said, today he's in federal prison, not for trafficking or racketeering, but for transportation for prostitution. A conviction that represents only a fraction of the allegations against him. So, Sean Combs' The Reckoning is more than just a documentary series. I think it's a cultural autopsy. It's an indictment of systems and silences. It's a reminder of the cost of unchecked power. And it seems the beginning and not the end of a long legal and cultural reckoning. So for that, I tell you, it's an important thing to watch. And I caution anyone who has a loved one who wants to pursue a career in music that they should watch this with very wide open eyes. And I hope that this is a real shakeup to the industry to protect young artists, especially female artists. So I encourage you to watch it. Again, like I said, it's 4 episodes, 1 hour long each. Parts of it are very difficult for you to watch if you are somebody who has ever experienced sexual trauma or know someone close who has also experienced that. Again, I think it is so commendable, all of these victims that have come forward. And I know that you will join me in celebrating their strength and their courage. It's really very admirable. And my thanks to the producers for chasing this story, continuing to chase this story, and ensuring that we take a real deep look at how we have systems of power set up, especially in this country. So again, you can watch it on Netflix. It is called Sean Combs, The Reckoning. As always, I want to make sure to remind you that you are subscribed. Make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast. Please leave a 5-star review. Join the Facebook group, Reality Life with Kate Casey. I would love to know what you think about this documentary series. You can get my weekly list of what to watch in unscripted TV by going to katecasey.substack.com. I've got bonus episodes, more behind-the-scenes stories. If you go to Apple Podcast and on Patreon at patreon.com/KateCasey. And then follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at KateCaseyCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Blue Sky, and Threads at KateCasey. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.